All right, class. In this video, we are going to do a diorama of Saturn. In this diorama, in this project here, it is a work along. You're going to be introduced to, let's see here, offset planes, sweeps, revolves, patterns, and I think that's about it. So let's go ahead and get started with this one. It's a fun little project here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm in my new file here. I'm going to make sure that I'm working in inches. If you're not, you can click on that little icon right there. It looks like a little notepad. Change it to inches and say OK. I now have this thing in inches. Rule number one of Fusion is you open a file, you create a new component, and then you save it. So my new component is going to be called Saturn. Happy with that. And now I'm going to save this thing. Save. And I'm going to call this one Saturn Demo. There we go. All right. I have my Saturn Demo. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to first come down here and go to change parameters under the modify tab. Make sure you're in the solids tab up here. Drop down, modify, again, change parameters. And that's going to bring up this window. And there's a few parameters I just know we're going to need. One, I'm going to go ahead and click the plus, just like we did before. I'm going to have a base. And for now, I'm going to make my base 5 inches. I'm going to put a note in here. This is the base for beats. Put beats only because diorama seems a little hard for me to type right now. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and make that a favorite. Cool. So I have a base. Second one, I am going to have a sweep underscore diameter. Again, these have to be one word. My expression, I'm going to do 0.25, so I'm going to make this 1/4 inch. And this is the stem. So go ahead and create those two. And trust me, I know you don't really know what we're going to be using these for, but I do, so we'll be good with that. So I have my base, I have a sweep. Let's make another one. We'll call this one planet. Planet. And I'm going to put underscore RAD. And the RAD stands for radius. So my planet radius, actually I'm going to do diameter, DIA. Planet diameter. And that is going to be in inches, and I will make this thing, how big do I want to make this thing? Let's make it 4 inches for now. This is the size of the planet. Oh, all right. And that one may be changing, so I'm going to put that up top also. So I have a base, I have the sweep, I have the planet diameter. I need the rings. So, yeah, rings 8. That should have been underscore. Rings height. I'm gonna make this thing point, I don't know, 0.25 again. That sounds fine. This is the height of the rings. Happy with that. Next one is going to be rings width. Make sure again it's all one word, so underscore rings width. And I'm going to make this thing 0.33. Let's make them a little bit wider than they are tall. This is the width of the rings. Oh my gosh, I can't spell this evening. Rings. There we go. And finally, I'm going to put in here ring spacing. S-P-A-C-I-N-G. There we go. Ring spacing. And I'm going to make this one 0.4. This is the spacing between the rings. There you go. I know a lot of these don't make too much sense for you, but go ahead and set these up. They're going to make your life a lot easier, and I think this is what we're going to need. So I have a base, and that's a 1/2 inch. I have a sweep diameter of 1/4 inch, or 0.25. I have a planet diameter of 4 inches. I have a ring's height of 0.25 or 1/4 inch. I have a ring's width of 0.33 inches. And I have a ring's spacing of 0.4 inches. And the neat thing is we can change these things around once we have Saturn built, and it will look just like how we want it to. So I'm going to say, okay, let's start creating. I'm inside of Saturn here. I have my focus on this. I'm going to go ahead and expand it out a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to create a new sketch. I'm going to put it right here on my XY. Again, if you look at the view cube here, the red line is X, the blue line is Z, which means the line going opposite, which is green right here, has to be the Y. I want to put this on the XY because if I was going to 3D print this, I would want it working from the base up. So I'm going to select that. And I'm going to create a center diameter circle. I'm going to put this right on the center and pull it out, just like that. Very good. Now I'm going to dimension this. We've done this before. Click the line, put out here, and I call this one base. Yeah, the base. There it is, 5 inches. I'm happy with that. I'm going to finish my sketch. I'm going to extrude this thing, and I'm going to bring it up. Let's bring this thing up maybe 0.5 inches and put it at a 45-degree taper, negative 45-degree taper. Ooh, that's ugly. Maybe not so much. How about a negative 20? Yeah, it's better. I like that. Negative 20-degree taper. And it's going to be a new body. And there we go. We're happy. We're sitting out in space. I'm going to go ahead and take this body here and expand it over here in my browser. Right-click body 1 and rename this thing. Where's that? Rename. There we go. And this is going to be my base. Woohoo! I'm happy. All right, let's create. We're going to stay in Saturn here because we're going to make multiple bodies in here. So I'm going to create a new sketch. And this one I want it to go perpendicular to what I have here at the bottom here. So if I did XY before and I want this thing to stand up, I am going to do my XZ plane. You can see it pops right like that. All right, so what we're getting ready to do is a sweep here. This is a really, really cool thing to do. It takes 2 steps to do, but again, it is really, really cool. So work with me on it. We have a create, and I want to create a spline. A spline basically is a line that has curves based off of points. So I did add a new thing to you I didn't tell you about. And I'm just going to go ahead and create some type of S here. Put a few things in here. It's up to you how you do this. I have found that putting dots in the center line here helps me out a little bit. So I'm happy with that. When I'm done, I'm going to come grab this check mark and hit the check. And there we go. I have this really cool little S going. All right. Next thing I'm going to do is see if I can put a dimension on this thing. I'm going to go from the bottom line here. It's not going to let me. I think that's a base point to the base of this thing. And we've made that point too. There you go. And it kind of moved up a little bit. I'm happy with that. I could align these things if I wanted to, but I think I'm going to be happy here. Yeah, I could move this up, but I'm going to be happy with that. All right, so I have this sketch here, which is my S. I'm going to come back here. You notice I've already violated rule number 2 of Fusion, which is name everything. So I need to name these sketches here. I'm going to name sketch 1, that was my base. Sketch 2 is my S path. All this is a path is the only thing we drew here. Looks pretty cool. So it's sitting out there in space. Looks pretty. Woohoo. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a offset plane. What an offset plane is, as we look here at the origins, if I were to show these planes, before we had our XY, our YZ, and our XZ planes, I can also put a plane out in space. For instance, top of this base here is at a plane. This edge here, if I were to find a flat spot of that, that would be a plane. But what I want is a plane that is completely perpendicular or at 90 degrees to this S. So what I'm going to do is come up here under Construct, and I am looking for Plane Along Path. Here we go. It's saying, what is your path? Here's my path. And I can put this thing anywhere I want. I'm going to take this arrow here. You see I can just drag the arrow. It goes everywhere I want. Woohoo! I'm going to put it all the way to the end because I want this thing sitting directly at the end of this thing. So I'm happy, and I'm going to say OK. This is that construction plane, and that's what I'm going to work off next. You're going to see also it shows right here under my browser, under construction. This is the plane here. I'm going to name this thing plane for sweep. It is. So I'm going to make my circle here and be happy. So let's create a new sketch. Where am I doing it? Right on that construction plane. And I'm going to come right off the center spot here because that's where I have this thing sitting on. If I were to flip this thing around a little bit, you can kind of see it. That's where that plane or that's along my path. It ended right here where I put the origin point, which is very helpful to me. So I can create a circle right here. I don't care how big it is because I'm going to put a dimension to it. And now I'm going to put my dimension. And what did I call this thing? Sweep diameter. There it is. I now have my sweep diameter. I'm happy with that. Okay. So I have my path, and perpendicular to it, I have this little circle here. If I wanted to look at that plane, it's right there, but I don't need to see it again. I am going to name sketch 3 here. This is my sweep geometry. It is a sweep geometry, but you can call it something else if you want to. I don't know, circle for the sweep, whatever. But it's a sweep geometry for me. All right, let's watch the magic happen. I'm going to come under Create here, and I'm going to come down to Sweep. And it brings up this neat little tool. I'm going to zip this around a little bit, zoom in. My profile is that circle. My path is right here, that S path. And there it is. What this thing just did, I'm going to put this to the home. It just created that profile all around this profile, or this path, I mean. And it even turned it and everything for me, so I'm really happy. I can change my orientation to always be parallel. It looks pretty ugly like that. In fact, it doesn't even work. So I'll go back to perpendicular. Happy with that. My operation, I can join this to the base if I wanted to, or I can say it's a new body. I'm going to make this thing, I'm going to make it a new body. And be happy with that. All right. I'll probably have to bring this down a little bit, but that's okay. And say okay. There we go. I now have that neat little S for Saturn. I'm happy with that. Again, I might make that a little thicker. It looks a little goofy. Let's come back here to my parameters, change parameters. And I made that down here, sweep diameter. I'm going to bring it up top here. I'm going to make that 0.35 maybe. Say okay. It looks a little better, a little thicker. And it's now coming into my base here, so I'm happy. I like that, I like it, I like it. Okay, Now let's go ahead and create Saturn. To do that, I am going to create a new sketch. Oh, I need to come up here real quick. This is my bodies, and this is my sweep. Everything's labeled. I like that. Minimize that. Here we go. My new sketch. I am going to put this on this plane right here. And what it is, it's parallel to my, or the same plane as my S here. So that looks like it's going to be my XZ. You can see it up here on my view cube. Put it right here on that plane. And I am going to draw Saturn, or at least half of Saturn. So I'm going to create a center circle. Make that nice and big. I'm happy with that. I am going to now dimension it. And this thing is planets, I believe I called it. Planet diameter. There we go. Pretty good. I am going to put a line straight from the top here. You notice it wants to lock in based off of that axis at the top and at the bottom. There we go. And I'm going to take this side over here and get rid of it by coming up here to my trim tool. So there's another tool I didn't tell you you're going to learn. And I'm going to trim off this left side. So I now have half a planet. But that's exactly what I want. Very good. And you can see it's still giving me my diameter, so I'm happy with that. All right, let's create some rings for Saturn. I'm going to make a construction line just so I know what I'm working off of here. So I grab the line, grab construction, come right off the center point, and I'm going to come straight out. And all it's really doing is giving me a spot to kind of line up and start with. Makes my life a little bit easier. I'm going to grab another one. I'm going to pull it off of Saturn here just a little bit. Happy with that. Cool. You can see this thing's constrained at 90 degrees, so I'm real happy with that. And later on, I may go and change this distance, but for now, I am happy. All right, let's go ahead and create a rectangle. And I'm going to make this thing a center point rectangle. I'm going to base it right off of that center point that I created. I'm going to come out. And the bottom one was, you can see the dimensioning that's happening there. I called that one the ring width. Hit tab. I have my ring height. Told you we were going to use these things again. There we go. Good. I'm happy with that. And I'm going to put in another dimension from this line to the center of Saturn here. I'm going to pull this up. And I'm going to call this one planet diameter divided by 2. So I have my radius plus, I'm going to put open parentheses. I'm going to call this one ring spacing times 2. Close parentheses. Center. And all I did was I moved the center point out a little bit. That's all I did. I'm happy where that's at. Cool. Now, let's go ahead and set our rings up here. I'm going to go ahead and now do something called a pattern tool. If you come under create, see this rectangular pattern? That's what I'm going to select. It's going to ask me what my objects are. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to grab all 4 of these lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Quantity in the first direction. What I tend to do is zoom out a little bit so I can see what this thing's trying to do. And I'll grab this arrow, move out this way. And you see the distance is showing up right here. I believe there are 7 rings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 7 rings. For my distribution, I can do extent, which is extent means you're going to do the total distance. How far out do you want this thing to be? Or the one below that is spacing. How much space do I want between these things? I'm going to do spacing, and that's going to be from center to center. So I'm going to go there, and my distance is ring spacing. Happy with that. I only need in the opposite direction 1, so I can go with that. And I'm going to say OK. And what it just gave me was this pattern right here of rings. I really don't like that ring spacing though. Let's change that because it's going to bug me. Change parameters. Ring spacing. So I'm going to make this, instead of 0.4, let's make that 0.75. 75. How does that look? Ooh, that looks much better. I like that. Okay. So I like this spacing now over here. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change this. What if I just do times ring spacing? How's that look? There we go. So what this is now is planet diameter divided by 2 plus ring spacing. That's all this is. Order of operation will be planet diameter divided by 2, and it's going to add my ring spacing. And here we are. Okay, so I have half of Saturn, and I have the profile of all of Saturn's rings. I'm happy with this. So let's go ahead and get Saturn to the height that I want it to be. I'm going to do a measure real quick. I want to see what from here to the origin. That's sitting at 0.74. I want to bring this down just a little bit. So I'm going to probably make this like 0.73, this dimensioning. Or 7.3, sorry. So I'm going to come from the center to the origin, move this over, and I'm going to make this 7.3. Let's move it down slightly. That's a little bit too much. How about 735? There we go. And all I want is the plant to barely get inside of this S. That's all I'm going after. Very good. Everything looks great. I could dimension this line out too if I really wanted to, but I'm just say it's a driven dimension. I don't need to. So I'll get rid of it because it's ugly. All right. There we go. We about have Saturn done. So I'm going to finish my sketch. I'm going to name it. This is Saturn and Rings. There we go. And now we're going to use our final tool, which is the Revolve tool. So I'm going to come up here to create, and you see it's up here also Revolve. Looks like a little quarter donut or something like that. Or you can come under create and come down here to revolve, either or. I have my revolve tool, my profile. I'm going to grab each of these rings, and I'm going to grab the half of Saturn here. And it's going to ask me for my axis, so I'm going to select that, and I'm going to grab this center line going right through the middle of Saturn. I'm happy with that. I'm going to go extent type. We're going to do full. We are going to change our operation from cut to new body. Check that out. Saturn's looking pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to say OK. And there we have Saturn sitting inside of this piece. And we now have a bunch of things we need to label. This is ring 2. So just go, and what I'm doing is highlighting over top of these things and figuring out which one they are. This one is ring 6. I have no idea why I did it in this order. This is probably going to be different. Just figure out which ring is which. Ring 5. And label away. Ring 1. Ring 3. 7. Ring 1, 2, 3, 4. The last one should be the planet. Yep, planet. There you go. So I have all my bodies now named. This sketch here, I need to name this thing. And this is planet and rings. There we go. Everything is now labeled. If I were to go back and look through this thing, I know exactly what I'm looking at, which is really, really cool. I think one final thing I'm going to do, because these rings would just fall down if they were just sitting there, is I'm going to connect them. So I am going to create a new sketch. I'm going to put it right on the top of these rings. And I'm going to grab a rectangle, or let me grab a center point rectangle. Rectangle, center rectangle. I'm going to come right off this origin point. I'm going to come all the way out. Let's see here. Let's make the height of this thing what? Let's make it ring width. It looks pretty cool. And I'm going to come all the way out to that little point. You see it on the right side. It's turning white. I'm going to lock right into that edge. I'm happy with that. Yep, this will work. I'm going to finish my sketch. I'm going to call this thing a locking bar. L-O-C-K-I-N-G space B-A-R, locking bar. I'm going to extrude this thing. Extrude it. What is it? I'm going to extrude. Now I have to go through and grab everything. There we go. That has everything for me. I'm happy with that. I am going to take this thing down. So you see it just turned negative right in here. So I'm going to do a negative ring height. These things match. And in my operation, I'm going to call join. This looks about right. Say OK. And there we go. I now have this bar locking everything in place. Although it's not real, because you wouldn't see that out in Saturn, but it doesn't matter. This thing is more to show that it has rings. And I'm happy. All right, so what I ended up with, and it looks like, where did I put it? Put it with the rings. Yep, put it with the rings. I'm gonna, actually it looked like it took all those things that we labeled before, created into one body, which is really, really cool. I'm actually gonna rename this now. Planet and rings. Cool. All right, and there we have. We have Saturn. It's one component, so it's all one big piece here. It has 3 bodies in it, and that makes up our diorama. If you all want to see it work, I'm going to take my history all the way back to the beginning, hit play, and this is us building Saturn. And that was it. If you have any questions, just let me know. If you wish to color it, feel free. Again, that's all right there in the appearance, or you can change the physical material and the appearance. Have any questions, let me know.